Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Thursday, the 5th of March 2026. So welcome to everyone attending today. We'll start with our standing items on the agenda. So apologies for absence.
I've received apologies from Councillor Matheson and Reverend Lennox.
Thank you. We then move on to the second item, which is to check the accuracy of the minutes from Thursday, the 8th of January. In your report, that's pages 11 to 16. Are there any items on those minutes which would indicate as a matter of accuracy? There is one, which was my fault. Councillor Mark Morris did put his apologies in, and I forgot. So, my bad. So we'll amend them accordingly. Okay, okay, so Mr. Green. Right, okay, we'll have those, yeah. Then we move to disclosure of members' interests, which is standing. We have our registered members' interests, which are available for the public to view. Is there anything on today's agenda which anyone wants to bring as something they've not previously disclosed? And again, I'm not seeing anything. So we can move on to the substantive part of the meeting. So the first item is the Early Help Annual Report 2025. In your report, that's pages 17 to 32. What I want to do, because there is a presentation this morning, is I want to bring in Audrey Kingham first, and then Marie's going to be taking the substantive part of the report. So Audrey, if I can bring you in first for that part of this morning's agenda.
Thank you, Chair, and morning, everybody. So 2 or 3 things to say ahead of the presentation. This is a really, really important foundation for the work that we do in children's more broadly, but specifically most of this rests within children's social care, young people and families, but really, really important. And I say that on the basis that we already work with families as early as we can, and I cannot emphasize any more strongly to you, we need to do much more of this, much earlier, much sooner, to be able to give more of our children, young people and families a better opportunity to be stronger and resilient more longer term. And Marie will take you through some of the service areas and the work that we do and some really key highlights from that. And the last thing from me ahead of Marie talking about this is you will have read in this report that we don't do this on our own. This is partnership, and that is really, really key and important for the work. So whilst a phenomenal team who do this work, it is also a phenomenal partnership who picks up and connects at the earliest opportunity with our children, young people and families. And I'll hand to Marie, who will take you through some highlights.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Chair. My name's Marie Roberts. I'm Head of Service for Social Care and Early Help. Obviously, you do have the report that covers the period up to November/December 2025. And for the sake of this presentation, I've just pulled out some key highlights just to show you, I guess, the wide variety and the stretch and the breadth of work that is undertaken across the Early Help Partnership. Down. Oh, there you go. So we'll start off with our first contact, which is our integrated front door. So at our front door for social care and early help, we have a team called First Contact, and they support families, divert families and make onward referrals for those referrals that come through the front door at that early help level. So the multi-agency referral form, the MARF, when that is submitted, when there is a safeguarding concern or an early help concern, that is filtered out, and the relevant and right support at the right level is put in for our families to try to reduce escalation. So just to go through some key, I guess, figures, we have had 4,000 requests for early help support through that team at the front door in the past 12 months. And what I will say is that 80% of those requests are diverted to the relevant support for families. So that could be giving families advice and support and guidance over the phone. That could be making onward referrals and engaging the right partner at the right time to support that family. So only 20% of those come through and families then are active and open and working to our family help, which is our targeted early help teams, and social care or social care. We have a support worker who works on that team who actually does a lot of the advice and guidance on the phone with families, diverting a further 150 families and giving them advice and support over a period of 4 weeks to ensure that they remain stable and don't require increased level of support intervention. That team also gatekeeps things like child-to-parent violence, young carers referrals, children wellbeing practitioners, and we have a new teenage relationship harm pilot which is currently ongoing. So that's where there is concerns under the age of 18 between young people due to their behavioural difficulties. And we also have healthy relationships and reducing parental conflict coordination that happens at that team as well. Okay, we'll just move over to Family Hubs, which is part of our early help offer, and really just a bit of a visual to show you or remind you the breadth of Family Hub support that we do have across the county. So we currently have 11 purpose-built Family Hubs and where they are located, as well as 7 dedicated outreach sites that don't fully function as a hub, but where families can go to get advice and guidance and support in their own local communities. We also, just to remind you, that we deliver above and beyond that within local schools, community venues, depending on where we need to go to support parents. So that can change depending on what the data and the need is telling us. Sorry, it's on a bit of a go slow this morning. So just some of the key achievements that we have delivered and developed over the past 12 months. Of course, you are used to me coming here, I think, for the past couple of years, giving this update, and I'm sure you're well versed by some of the things that are the activity that is undertaken across the family hubs. Multi-agency, as Audrey spoke about, it's not just done in a silo. We work very closely with colleagues from mental health services, from health services such as midwifery, health visiting, for example, and our community sector as well. So on top of the general activity and the support that goes on in our hubs, the delivery, the group work, I've just picked out a couple of key achievements. Some of that is around national recognition. So we have been shortlisted for 2 awards last year at the Children and Young People Awards 2025 for our outstanding work with engaging fathers. And you remember, I think last year we talked a lot about some of the practice and some of the work that was ongoing with DadPad, with our DigiPads, with our targeted support for fathers right across the county. So in relation to that support, we were shortlisted for that award. We've also been shortlisted for our SUDI Prevention Eyes on the Baby project, which is a pioneer and multi-agency training and research project aimed at eliminating sudden unexplained infant death. So in the past it was called cot death. So we've been equipping practitioners with tools and confidence to share safe sleep messages. We've been delivering a lot of multi-agency training, and actually we do have some data that has recently been released that shows that has helped, and the number of unexplained deaths has reduced. We've also been highlighted in the first ever men's health strategy for England around our father inclusive practice. So Northumberland's actually noted in terms of the work that we've been doing, which is an absolute credit to the partnership working that has been undertaken. We've also got things like we're continuing to register births for our babies within our family hubs where we can, to offer support at the very first opportunity that we can with families. So that's still ongoing. We've also achieved UNICEF Level 3 infant feeding accreditation, which is reflecting our commitment to high quality perinatal support. And I will say that this is really, really unusual for family hubs across the country to get this level of UNICEF accreditation. A lot of partnership activity and support goes on to ensure that we are able to not just get that, but keep it. We do get visited every year to ensure that we are still delivering those high standards to keep that level 3 accreditation. And we've also increased our multi-agency delivery with our partners and now deliver joint programmes such as Relax Kids and Charge Up, which is support young people with emotional regulation and well-being. Just a couple of slides that I've picked out in terms of some of the data around our family hubs. So this shows, the first bar chart shows people attending our family hubs, and you can see, I know it's not specifically clear, I think you can look at the actual numbers a little bit better in the report, but you can see that the number of people attending our family hubs is going up. As well as in the second bar chart, the number of sessions that are held within the hubs, again, is increasing. So we have seen almost 6,000 sessions in the past 12 months having been run. So that's 6,000 sessions that our parents and children can come to right across the county. And during 24 to 25, 11,500 people have attended. And I will just make a note of, we do have a lot of sessions that are ongoing in our, what we would classify as our super output areas, which are our more deprived areas across the county. And we do have a high number of families from those areas that are registered and attending family hubs, which I really think it's important to stress. For as much as they are there for everybody, we do have that universal offer, but it's really, really important that we are getting the families in and using the services that really, really need them. Again, just to highlight the work and support that we are putting in place for our families with children with SEND. We have various sessions ongoing, support groups, parents as early educator programmes. We have PEEP sessions, which is around supporting parents with the home learning environment, or speech and language, as we used to call it. We have created sensory spaces and rooms in the hubs that families can access. And we've also rolled out a whole network of SEND champions right across our early help system. And that is a network of staff who are trained and I guess who are the more specialist experts to support families further, give advice and guidance, refer for any families where there is SEND needs right across the hubs and into our community services. The hubs are also used by community and leisure groups, as well as our in-house family support DCT team, who take advantage of using the spaces there to be able to further support our families in the community. Moving on to our early health and prevention team. So this is a newly formed team that was put in place as of September last year. It is embedding Northumberland's Communities First ethos, as well as aligning with our Family First Partnership programme reform. So that's the social care reforms that are ongoing. And it advocates for a seamless integrated system that prioritises prevention and early intervention. So the focus of the team is around providing training, guidance and support to partners to be able to deliver their own early help for families. So rather than families having to get at a certain level, needs and risks increasing and having to be referred into our front door or into our family hubs for that more targeted support, it's allowing our communities themselves, our VCS and our partners to be able to further support families at the right time, at the right level before those complexities increase. So we provide training and guidance to our partners and VCS organisations to upskill them to be able to do that. They also oversee and maintain a directory of resources for schools and partners, which show really at a snapshot what support there is out there for children and families. They promote early identification and intervention to reduce reliance on our high-cost, more statutory services and preventing escalation of families into social care. And we are also developing volunteering pathways right across children's services with family champions and family hub community roles as well. Moving into our family help teams, so these are teams right across the county who work with our families when they are in need of targeted early help. So that is, I guess, the threshold and the level that sits right below social care, below our child in need. And just to show you some of the numbers really and some of the outcomes that we have over the past year. So we work in a whole family approach with our family help workers being actually situated in our family hubs to be able to support families in the communities. And really this chart just shows the number of families. It says episodes, but that's the number of families that we are currently supporting. The last bar, because isn't finished, so it looks like there's been a bit of a dip, but actually it was because this report was written during the quarter, so it's not about having reduced numbers. So it's just showing you really the stable numbers that we are actually working with in terms of families and children, and it sits at really just under 900 a year, so quite significant numbers. Just in terms of some of the outcomes from our family help teams. So the top table shows the number of families who are having an assessment at that early help. So the top bar, or the top, the light blue, I would say, is the children, the bottom is the families. So you could see that there's peaks and troughs in terms of referrals coming through and assessments being undertaken. And the bar chart underneath that shows the success rates. So when we have worked with those families and we are closing those family cases down, the green number is those families and those cases that are closed successfully. So you can see that is 87%. So that is improving, I guess, quarter on quarter, year on year. And what tends to happen is for those families that aren't closed successfully, it tends to be that they've either moved out of area, they've disengaged and they no longer want to work with services, or actually they've been stepped up and they're now active to our social care because of the risks and the complexities having increased. I'm going to briefly talk to you about our youth justice and our early help part of youth justice. I'm sure you're aware that youth justice spans right across the system. So I'm just going to focus on the early intervention part of our youth justice here, which is our turnaround programme and our out-of-court resolution programme as well. So just to highlight turnaround, that is some grant funding that we do get from the government. And we have had 57 young people supported over the past 12 months under the turnaround programme. 55 of those young people have gone on and not offend. So we've only had 2 young people who've been through that programme who have actually went on to commit an offence, which I think is a really, really successful rate. We have obviously our out-of-court resolution programme where we do work with our partners, police, community safety, education, health, housing, social care, probation, for example, to work with children to prevent them from going through a more formal intervention in terms of youth justice and having that criminal record and being convicted of something. So we are diverting them by way of having a multi-agency panel and putting interventions in place to prevent them from going on to further offending again. I will say that we have had a rise last year in our first time entrants. So that is the number of young people who have actually gone on to commit a crime. So it's called an FTA, that's a first time entrance rate. And we have had 45 young people who have committed that formal crime last year. It has gone up. But I will say that over the past 3 months, it is coming down. The way that the Youth Justice Service reports their data is actually quite far behind our current system. So we are looking at reporting data from 12-month period, but what I can see over the past 3 quarters, that number is significantly reducing. And that's due to a lot of the work that we are putting in across the team and across the system with our partners to try to divert people, children, and work with those community partners around hotspots across the city, across the county, to try to identify where children more likely will be getting involved with antisocial behaviour, to prevent that from happening in the first place. Move on to Sorted, which is our substance misuse service for young people. And again, just to show you some data from the National Drug Treatment and Monitoring System, and this actually shows that there has been a drop in referrals into our programme for children where alcohol is concerned, but there is a rise in cannabis use. So you will be able to see there on the left the England figures, and on the right is actually the Northumberland figures, with the top line showing you the use of cannabis, which is more prevalent in Northumberland. And I will say, for as much as we don't want young people using cannabis, obviously the more dangerous drugs are pretty low in terms of referrals that come through Sorted, which is unlike some of the other local authorities that we are aware of. Down the country, for example, they would have a higher use of, for example, heroin, ketamine use so cannabis. For as much as it does look high and the figures are slightly rising, it is not such a worrying picture as it could be. The team has also secured further funding from Public Health for a specialist stop smoking and vaping worker. They have been working with 41 young people to prevent them from going from using vaping to cigarette use, as well as to reduce their vaping use. So you can see that there's been 12 successfully treated young people, with 20 people currently going through programmes, and a small number of those young people who are refusing to engage with that. So in terms of general next steps, as well as continuing on in terms of some of the work that we've been doing, just to highlight some of the things that we do want to work on and are working on in the coming 12 months is around our family hubs. So we now have commitment from the government from the next 3 years around further funding within our family hubs, which is brilliant, and they will be being rebranded to Best Start Family Hubs. There is a healthy programme, Healthy Babies Guide, which we will be adhering to, and a lot of the work which will be focusing on, again, those 1,001 days, really, really important. But moving forward, we will be focusing on achieving GLD, so that's that good level of development for our children going into school. So a lot of the work around family hubs will be ensuring that we are working with our partners across early years, across health, and promoting and working to our Best Start plan, which will be published on the 31st of March. We will further work with our partners in the VCS to increase our early help provision for families within the communities. We will be embedding our early help strategy, which was just published, I think, back in November, with a lot of priorities and a lot of actions that sit under that. We will be aligning our current family help teams, which obviously have our targeted early help offer, with child in need, and that is under the Family First Partnership reforms, and that's something that the government, the DfE, are requiring all local authorities to do. So there is a lot of work and a lot of piloting going on behind the scenes to ensure that there is a smooth transition and a seamless system of family help. So that's the targeted early help and the child in need element of family help that has to be in place by March 2027. And we will be increasing our model of prevention within our youth justice service to further be able to support our young people and to divert them away from offending. So that's our key priorities moving forward. And I think that's all of the slides, so thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Marie, for that. We're being asked, it says on the report, no decisions are required. The report is for scrutiny to note. We could just walk on and do another presentation, but I have a feeling you'll want to raise some things from this. So I'll open the floor to questions. So I've got Georgina and then Suzanne, and then go ahead, Georgina.
Thank you. There's obviously a lot of activity going on here, and we know this is a well-performing department in the council. I suppose so we can be generally assured it's difficult to really do a deep dive and really test how this is all working. I mean, there is the issue. I do have one main question, just a couple of points before that, about how well capturing people. Is it 100%? Is it purely on referrals, or what are the other sort of methods of capturing people in need, families in need? I'm just wondering, you didn't use the word advocacy, but how much is the support around advocacy? So you'll meet families and they've made mistakes. So, for example, there's a partner. They said, I don't want anything more to do with him or her. I don't want the money. And you think, well, actually, you do need the money, and you've got 3 children with them, and you do. Or they've moved into a house that's been refurbished, but it's not been to the standard, and you think you shouldn't have accepted the house. So it's around the advocacy and advice and helping them in their lives. How much is that part of the service? But my main question is around SEND. And it is obviously a lot of children, young people have specialist needs, and it's often when you see people that are not getting their needs met because they're not being diagnosed. But actually there's the other side of it, and this is a national debate at the moment, which is the country can't possibly afford how much SEND there is. And there's so many increasing numbers that it just can't everyone now, almost the vast majority it seems, do have some sort of SEND claim, and it's, as well as it's not affordable, but you don't want to create an unnecessary cycle of dependency when it's just everyone's a bit different, everyone has. So how much, it's not a kindness actually in many ways to put people under SEND when they're not really. So I'm just wondering, if part of you're speaking to families and this early help, how do you get the message sometimes where, it isn't actually a special education need? Your child is not got a particular need. How do you address that? Because everyone seems to be coming forward now and saying they think their child has got some special need when they probably don't, because by almost definition, there shouldn't be the numbers that there are.
Marie, are you happy to take that? Yeah.
I'm just going to break that question down, if that's all right. Thank you very much. I think the first part, I think I got 3 bits from that. I think the first part was around how do we know that it's the right thing for our families and children. So, and it's not just about data. It's not just about we can tick this box. And I did have a chart up there that told you, 87% of families that close to family help is successful, etc. We do a lot of surveying. We do a lot of questions. We do a lot of group activity. We have parent carer panels in the hubs where we are getting direct feedback from our families to tell us, I guess, to inform us, what do they want? What else can we be doing? Is this the right thing? How do we need to change our services to be able to meet their needs? So there is a lot of activity that's going on. In terms of... I've missed the middle bit. The advocacy. I guess when a family is allocated a worker, so social worker, family help worker, somebody from the family hubs, a family hub worker, part of what they want to do is to empower that family to unpick some of their own issues and to give them advice and guidance with a bit of a helping hand. Now, what we don't want to do is take that power away from them, because it is very much about empowering, and we can't be there all the time for every concern, but it's about guiding and putting that support in place. When we have a family that's open to family help, we do a thorough assessment, so we are looking at every single aspect of that family's life, not just what their present need is. So they may present with a child that they need support because of issues around SEND. There might be domestic violence in there might be substance misuse, parental mental health. But our worker would then go out to the family home, speak to the children, ask the children what their need is, look around the home. Is there other things that we may be missing that may increase the complexity or the risk further down the line? So it might not be an issue at the moment, but how can we get in there? And we will wrap around that family. So it's not just our worker and the parent, but who from the family network can support that family, and who from the community can support that family, and which other professionals need to be around the table to supporting and putting that advice and guidance is. So we will signpost, we will do that. We won't call it advocacy, but we will do that hand holding to support that family, to ensure that they know who are the right people to have around the table and to approach and how to approach them, what's out there, what's available, what are their rights, for example. So our workers will do that either at the family hub level, the family help level, or in first contact with our early help workers that sit at our front door as well. I think Audrey's going to come in on the SEND, but could I just mention one little thing in terms of SEND? I've talked about the champions, so it's very much about upskilling our workforce around SEND. We can't do it all, so we are there to advise, guide, signpost again, where the support is. And I will say that as part of the family hubs, what I haven't spoke about within the report, because it's not quite here yet, the guidance that did come out from the government back in November around the Best Start family hubs for 2026 to 29 is around that SEND element. So we are looking to having SEND specialists in each of the family hubs moving forward from April. Now, what the government hasn't yet told us is what that looks like and what their role will be. But we are waiting for extra guidance that I am expecting actually this month. And this is a national programme, and there will be a whole further element of support for children, for families where there is children with SEND linked to family hubs. So there will be more support and guidance coming. I'll hand you over to Audrey.
Thank you. So it's the right question to ask, actually. Really good question. And I started by saying that this set of services do that wrap around much earlier to try and do some of the prevention. So this is one aspect of how we would work with any families around any children who may present with special education needs or disabilities. We also have obviously our disabled children's team for any children who are very, very specific. They would link in. And then once children move into either childcare, nursery settings or into education, it becomes more formal. This is the opportunity to work with families to try and answer some of the questions that you posed, Councillor Health, thinking about, is it a special educational need? What is the challenge around that child or the broader, wider family? And Marie set out some of the complexities that different families face. I think later at the end of facts, when we talk about work programme, it's likely I will raise the white paper and green consultation. And that's something that I would like you to be involved in terms of where that's going. At the moment, in terms of the SEND system, it's business as usual, but you will be aware that we've got a white paper published and we've got a green consultation paper, and I'll talk about some of the details a bit more. That is starting to recognise the pressures in the system and the growing numbers. It's also starting to divide and split out some of the potential routes and the levels at which SEND would be recognised moving forward. But I'll talk a little bit about that later, if that's okay.
That's great. Thank you, Audrey. I've got Suzanne, then I've got Mr Hodgson, and then we'll...
Thank you.
Councillor Green, and then we'll move progress from there. Suzanne.
Thanks, Marie. Yes, this is more of a sort of two practical questions, really. I went around the family hubs last summer, and I was amazed, and I'm not surprised at how much you packed in there, because it was packed to the rafters with stuff, and great stuff like the dad pads, the breastfeeding programme, the turnaround programme. However, I missed the sorted programme. Is that new, and how long is that going to continue? And I'd love to get more comms on that to get into the community, if not a presentation at our town council, because yes, the drugs of choice are thankfully a bit more limited to cannabis and alcohol misuse and vapes, obviously. So I'd love to get more information about that and access for parent groups that I work with anyway. So that would be great. The second one kind of follows on from that as well, because you are so packed. When I went round, what I did notice about the Hexham Hub, especially, is not only how brilliant the staff are and the amazing work they do, but how little space they had. So there was staff working in sort of smaller rooms or giving over their space to have quieter parental meetings that needed to happen. And I did get the sense that they were bursting to capacity and they needed a bit of an expansion. So, I mean, 3 years more funding is great. I'm hoping it goes more into the building to expand the services that you've just raved about there, and rather rightly so, rather than into the rebrand. So could that be a focus to look at the capacity of the hubs? Because I think it says on page 26 in two places, it talks about the VCSE with the larger hub buildings only, and then where practical, family hubs have developed young people's spaces with groups being run from the SEND and after school clubs. So it very much sort of hints at a space issue within the system. So I'm hoping that can be addressed.
Just going back to your first question, Sorted. So Sorted is a team that is funded by Public Health that work with our young people who have substance misuse issues, so prevent as well as treat. So they work right across the system from the age 10. Obviously, we'll get very few young people who require it at age 10, more around smoking, right up to actually 25. In our adult population with our leaving care cohort of young people as corporate parents. So they go into schools and deliver programmes and advice and guidance in schools, as well as one-to-one support for our children and young people who need it with substance misuse. Very much about preventing, but again, if there is an issue with young people, then they can be referred into that team. More than happy to speak to you outside of here in terms of getting you more information, as well as coming out to any meeting that you may want to have that support. In terms of the hub, what I will say is we are a little bit stuck with some of our building sizes. I absolutely get that we are bursting at the seams, that we wanted to do more, but we are a hub and spoke model. So for as much as we do have the hubs, what we are trying to do is go out into the communities. So yes, we are confined in some ways by the four walls, but we are trying not to let that stop us, because we will go into community centres, we will go into schools, we will go into early settings to be able to deliver. And actually, for as much as I would love an all singing, all dancing hub absolutely everywhere if we could have them, a lot of the work that we will be doing moving forward is really going to be about looking at our GLD population, our good level of development, ensure that all of our children are achieving, and actually that will probably mean that we need to be more mobile in doing that, to go where the data is telling us we need to go into work into and closer with our communities, rather than having our families come to us. How can we link up more in the future with our earlier settings, with our nurseries, with our childminders, with our schools, so we can deliver out in the community rather than having people. So it's not going to prevent us, because some of the buildings are smaller. It won't prevent us from delivering and doing our best for our communities. But the money that we have got in terms of grant funding, which is obviously ring-fenced to our family hubs, a very small portion of that is for capital build. So unfortunately there is not the money there to be able to put into purpose-built buildings or securing further buildings moving forward.
Thank you, Marie. So we'll move progress. So Mr. Hodgson and then Councillor Green, and then we'll move on to the next item.
Yeah, thanks. I really do think you should be commended. I think there's some fantastic work going on. It really does show clearly what it's the effectiveness you had. But if you take the Best Start in Life and the school readiness approach, is there not, to a certain extent, an elephant in the room? And that elephant in the room is parents as the first educators. Because I think as the local authority, you can do so much. And the idea to close that attainment gap, I think what you can do is give that support. But I think in the home, the parent as that first educator, I mean, you can reel off all the things, you know, potty training, access to appropriate books being read to, stimulating toys, language development, physical activities, limited screen time, all those things you can lead and guide, but that gap, unfortunately, if that's not dealt with, by the time they get to school, which is what you're talking about, school readiness, that attainment gap is there. Have you got any data at the moment to show that the effectiveness of your support is closing that gap at the moment? Or have we just not been working long enough to have any data? Because my worry is that although it's the best wish in the world to close the attainment gap, it might be an impossibility if we don't deal with the fact that the parents are the first educators, and you as a local authority can only go so far. And you're doing a great job.
Great question. Really great question. Really topical, actually, in our discussions at the moment. So if you think about all of that work that Marie has shared, think about our family hubs, and on many occasions we rely on families coming to us. So we are right in the middle of a piece of work which is about saying, where are the families who don't come to us, who don't want to come to us? We've got a number of, I guess, policy and approaches. So we had the additional 2-year-old offer, actually unfortunately called a 2-year-old entitlement. We have examples of parents saying to us, we know we are entitled to this childcare. So we're actually, we've been invited to be part of a national project, and we're right in the middle of both recruitment to lead that project and working out what that parameter will look like with Cabinet Office. And some of that will be some pilot areas in Northumberland where we will look at the areas where we have the lowest levels of good level of development for our children, that 2-year-old check, and then monitoring up over, and really doing a targeted approach. To be able to have an impact, we need to know at the earliest possible point where a child will become part of our population. So Marie's team are doing a big piece of work around, can we get a 24-week check and list of everybody who we know about who will give birth at that point, bring a child into our population? Can we start that engagement so much earlier? And actually, where we have some challenging areas where our data is lower, and our early years team, if Kay was sat next to me, would be able to say to you, I have a list of every child and every household where I need to make a difference. And that's because we now have GLD targeted areas where we have to make significant closure of the gap by 2028. If I recall it right, I think our target in Northumberland is 78.2% for good levels. We are currently at 69.3%, and that's pretty good. But that means if I have 10 children, I have to say 3 of them won't make that good level of development, and that's not an acceptable position. So there will be some difficult work ahead where we are saying to parents, before you are able to access your entitled childcare, we expect you to have followed the following programme. And that's an opportunity for us to really make a big difference and dig in. So I've got the baseline data at the moment. You should hold me to account on that. And this time next year, come back and say to me, so where are you now? And where are we the year after, by which we have to show that 2-year change on the GLD target from a national perspective. Is that helpful?
You stole one of my questions later on, so I've crossed it off. It's all right. That's good. Right, Councillor Green, and then we'll move progress. So thank you for
Chair.
that,
How do we get around this, let's say, stigma of a young struggling family sort of self-referring themselves and coming to the front door when I know that a lot of them are scared that the social services are going to take the children away, but they do need the help, but they're scared to come to you?
Yeah. Okay. I think it's a multifaceted approach. I think it is very much about reducing that stigma, and it's about how our staff engage with families out there. So it's about not going out there and judging our families. It's going to be around word of mouth, and you can see that the number in the data in the report, the number of families and parents that we have engaging who have memberships to family hubs is increasing. It's very much word of mouth. We are using different social media sites to try to, as you say, access populations that may use it. Facebook, Instagram, putting on those messages in terms of, it's not just, don't just come to the family hub because there's a problem. Come to the family hub because actually this is your entitlement. You should come here. It's a fun place to come. You can access things. You can come with friends, and we will be moving forward. linking with our community on VCS, as well as our volunteering programme, having a lot of more unstructured activities happening in the hub, where we are hoping to be able to engage families to be able to come to oversee their own programme. So for those families that don't want to come and have a family hub worker who are at the front and guiding the session, they can come, they can have their own toddler group, for example. They could come and have their own young parents group. So that's in the works for the next 12 months, but it's very much about, for me, word of mouth. It's about having open access, but it's about my staff not judging people. So my staff are highly trained around engagement techniques, how they can support, how they can provide. And it's for example, you might get a family that come to the hub, and our staff who are delivering sessions might actually observe an issue that a family has. The way they talk to the child, the way that the family's dressed, something that they hear, and it's about how my staff then approach and engage that parent in a non-stigmatising way to feel comfortable and further come back to the next session, but also to further disclose any difficulties that they are having to be able to seek that right advice, guidance and support.
I hope that answers that. We've had a good discussion, and I think part of what you said as well, Mr. Hodgson, around that first 1,001 days is critical, not just for partners, statutory partners, voluntary partners, but also parents themselves. And I know that this is something which we'll be looking at over the next few months. But at the weekend, I went out for some food, and I was next to a table with a family with a very small child who was probably about 1.5, maybe 2, and another one who was probably about 3 or 4. And both those kids were on devices, whilst the parents were chatting away to each other. And actually, in a blended approach, there's no problem with using kind of visual stimulants. But when you see devices like tablets, which you can buy in Argos now, all branded with lovely little, pink and blue and whatever, it's not a baby minding tool. The best way to support your children is to actually have conversations and interact and eye contact. So I think there's something around using that social media that we have really good access to reinforce that whilst you might think it's a good thing to keep your child quiet, actually, in the long run, it's one of the worst things you can do. And I was guilty of this last night because I printed out a map and I actually did that on a piece of paper, which just shows even someone of my age, and there are stories in schools of kids who have books where they do this to try to widen it. Instinctively, I had people, and I did that. I thought, crikey, when it's a piece of paper. So, when it's embedding in someone of my age, then you can see how it can be problematic going on. But there's nothing which beats that book and that conversation. But I think there is something which I would like to look at as an action to see if we can get some social media messaging out about the impact of using things like tablets on young brain development, which is not positive. Quickly, Suzanne, then we'll move on. I'll quickly bring Audrey and then we'll move on. Yeah.
I think all I'll say is watch this space around the Cabinet Office project. It'll link into what you have asked us around, particularly task and finish groups. So we're trying to do that connectivity so that we're picking up the issues that we experience, we understand our services, what they're picking up. But actually, as a community, what we're also seeing, I am of the view that society has changed, and that underpins a huge amount of the challenges and work that we have to support, help, and actually it cannot go on. We have to do something. So watch this space.
Very good.
But can I just say, one of the key issues is parenting is not easy, and education of your child is not easy. You've got to persevere. So like the likes of potty training, the likes of reading to your child every night, the likes of stimulating activities. And it's very easy then to think, I'll just give them the tablet or I'll just put them in front of the TV. Unfortunately, what we've got to get across is you've got to keep working at it, because they're the things that are going to help your child to succeed at school. And if you lose those crucial early years, you know, we know what the story is. And that's the frightening thing. And it's the difficult thing of convincing or explaining to parents, you've got to stick at it. You've got to work hard with your child. Don't take the easy option. And we all know as parents at times we do take the easy option. But you've got to, that's the message you've got to give.
Final contribution, Mr. Bird, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, thanks, colleagues, and thanks, Marie, for a great report. And
Yeah.
I enjoy listening to any report that commends the staff for the work that you do. So thanks for doing that. Very quickly, go back to the sorted bit, please. My members, head teacher members across Northumberland, are reporting a massive increase in use of nicotine pouches in schools. Clearly, vaping is not allowed in the school premises, and now students, I should say, are resorting to these nicotine pouches, which we all know are safer than smoking or vaping, but come with associated risks themselves, and they are highly addictive. There's no data about that. Is it something that we're not seeing as a problem in Northumberland, or are we working towards it?
I don't have any specific data around that. The team manager for Sorted might have some data. I don't know what a nicotine pouch is, if I'm honest with you.
We'll pick that up
but I
as a
can't pick
question
that up.
after this. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I
Thanks,
suspect
colleagues.
public health would probably know a bit more about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Right, so good conversation there. We're now moving on to item number 5 in your agenda pack, pages 33 to 54, which is the annual representations report 24-25. Audrey, you're going to introduce this, and then we'll be going over to Karen, who will talk us through the report. So, Audrey first.
Thank you, Chair. Karen and Fern, who are extended members of Children's Services, very much part of the wider family. So you will often hear me talk about we know ourselves well in children. We feel we know ourselves well. I want to be really clear, and I think you've heard me say this before, that we never rest on our laurels, and recognise how important it is for our parents, carer, families and residents to give us feedback, whether that's positive or negative. You know, it may be that we don't always get it right. There are opportunities for us to get compliments, and as always, you usually get less compliments than you do either enquiries or complaints. But the way in which we use this is as a learning experience in children's. So we look at it and say, could we have done something differently? Could we review that? Could we approach it in a different manner? And we do that throughout the year. And very much the work that Karen, Fern and team work with us on allows us to be really clear, appropriate, to give the feedback to anyone who comes to us, but then to feed that back into our services and use that as a learning experience. So I'll hand you to Karen.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Chair. As Audrey says, the council's very positive around welcoming all feedback from our customers, and we take every opportunity to use those as learning to reflect and improve on services being provided to our residents. So they do have a right to raise a concern and have them properly addressed through this formal process. Within the council, we do have 2 processes for formal complaints. We have the statutory process, which is specifically for certain parts of the Children Act, and we also have the council's own non-statutory corporate process. As part of the statutory process for children's, we are required to provide you with an annual update report, and that's the purpose of this report today, which you've all had, and I'm assuming you've all read and digested. So this is to provide
you as our members with assurances that complaints are being handled in accordance with statutory and non-statutory process, and to assure you that the council are taking lessons from all of the feedback that we receive. So this is going back to 24-25's data. Obviously, it's a bit late in the year, but you know it's still relevant. We've got to deliver that. So overall, in 24-25, the complaints did decrease slightly. But I would ask you not to focus so much on the actual numbers. It's around the findings within the complaints and what the council have taken from it as learning from those. That's the more important bit in the issue to focus on. And one of the important points to remember is that out of around 3,500 open cases to children's services, our complaints only represent less than 2% of our customer volume. So in that sense, the formal side of complaints isn't a big percentage in terms of our opening cases and involvement. However, we do welcome all feedback. Only 7 of those 89 complaints were received from young people themselves. It's assuring that young people have a lot of other avenues within the council to provide feedback, such as the Mind of My Own process, advocacy. The residential homes all record issues and concerns locally, and will escalate where necessary to a more formal, reflective level for the complaints. 6 of the complaints received from young people were resolved very early at stage 1 without the need for further progression. The one that did progress was then resolved at stage 2, which again didn't escalate right through the full process, which is 3 stages at statutory. So that's good. We're always looking at resolution and trying to find the early resolutions for our customers and young people. We often get feedback from clients who maybe aren't happy with services. They've directed the issue to the complaints team, but for many reasons we don't actually take it as a formal complaint. So over the year we've had 254 of those inquiries where we've maybe directed them signposting to other services within the council or other statutory processes such as appeals, which actually are the best route for them to get the redress they're requiring from that. As Audrey said, we also gather compliments. We don't get as many because I think it's just natural human nature to go more at the complaint. People feel more they need to raise concerns than praise and compliment. But we have had 114 over the year across that, and they are reflected within the report. I've put a snapshot in there of some of the compliments we've received. So any complaints that we do get at the various stages where they are upheld or partially upheld, that means that there has been some fault or concern justified, maybe the service hasn't been provided as we should have done. That's where we take learning from those complaints, and we are now putting that learning into development plans across the service. Some of the learning we've actually put forward for over the last year is in the report. We're improving investigation qualities, response times, strengthening expectations for parents, carers. We're reviewing written information that's provided to parents and carers to ensure their understanding of service provision is better, clearer. We are reinforcing the quality of case recording within the service to make sure that we have the records there. Made, why those decisions have been made, to comply with data protection processes and cross-team collaboration. And we're also delivering training now in various areas on matters such as fetal alcohol spectrum disorder that was identified within a complaint consideration, drug and alcohol testing guidance. That's been now formulated for staff to better support them in knowing when to put those processes in place. And we are also developing more complaint handling training for across the directorate. So we have better investigation and reflection within our considerations of people raising issues. I'll not go into detail of the separate complaint processes, but there is 2 of them. There's the statutory and the non-statutory. They do have timescales, strict timescales. We can't always meet those timescales because of resource, because people are on holiday, because there's various elements. But we will ensure that complainants are kept up to date at every point so that they know exactly what's going on, when it's going on, and they know when to expect a response from us. Once a complainant has completed the complaint process, they do have the right to escalate to the local government and social care ombudsman, and they will do an independent look at what the issues are, what the council have done in terms of investigation, and to see whether they can find any further resolution that should be provided to the person individual. We had 28 inquiries from the local government ombudsman during that year. Not all inquiries from them lead to a full investigation. They might think they've got nothing further to add from what the council have already done, or there may be a more appropriate route for the person to take forward their inquiries, such as a legal route or an appeal route. So out of the 28 inquiries, 9 cases were that's not quite right. The 9 cases where fault was found after full investigation, and we accepted those. So out of the 28, I apologise, I don't have the number that went forward to full investigation, but 9 cases were found with fault on the council, and resolutions were put in place from that, where all the ombudsman was happy with all resolutions put forward, and that the council fully complied with those. The ombudsman now issues an annual report as well, so that's available online, where you can actually have a look at how they rate the council in terms of responding to complaints, dealing with them, and how we put lessons in place and do resolutions. We're now also clearly recording and reporting back to clients on where we can't take a complaint forward. These can be matters such as if there's a concurrent court process ongoing, such as if they may be in family court, we wouldn't take a complaint at the same time as doing that sort of thing. If it's out of time, a complainant usually has 12 months in which to escalate the complaint to us if they're dissatisfied. We will usually look at things individually to see if there is any benefit in taking that complaint forward. But by the complaints legislation, we don't have to investigate anything after 12 months. Where there's alternative statutory appeals, such as an EHCP, there's an appeals process. If there's a more pertinent or relevant appeals process, we will reroute people to the appropriate route through that. So I have included in there details of how many we have rejected now or returned for the reasons that would do with that. As I state, the main aim of complaints is learning and making service improvements across the board. And the priorities for the year ahead for us was improving our accuracy of complaint data, improving the timeliness of responses and investigations, and we're offering in-person and online training for children's services officers on investigating and responding to complaints and feedback. And we're also encouraging the increased recording of compliments wherever possible. So I would like to thank the department for being so cooperative and supportive with the complaints, investigations and handling. Our team, whilst Audrey said we are part of the family, we are actually independent from children's services. We don't sit within the department. Complaints is a separate department altogether. So yeah, that's all from me, Chair. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Just before I open it up to the floor, 3.9.
Yeah.
Whereas social care numbers have increased, corporate complaints have decreased.
Yeah.
That tells, and again, it does reference in the report that people have a right to complain and to raise their concerns. But I think that's quite telling, because in most cases, the more people you have using something, if something is inherently wrong with that service, you'll get more complaints. But what it's telling us is more people are using, but actually the number of complaints has gone down, which would suggest to me that there's something going very right, but we never rest on our laurels.
No.
So that constant use of the complaint process as an opportunity to learn
It's a review.
and improve, I think is a really good one, which I think has been born in your presentation. So I'll open it up to the floor if anyone has any questions. Georgina Hill.
You sort of answered my first question. I had two, and it was about how much independence there was in the process. Independence comes in at the ombudsman stage. This is complaints processes all along, isn't it? I mean, we have it all when it's cultural or pressure. Somebody who works in this organisation investigating them, and there is an issue, and it's not just important for justice to have independence, but the people can be confident there's independence. So that's my first question. And the second one is, how much do you encourage, which is something I do, is like informal complaining. So when I have people say, I want to make a complaint about something, I'll say, well, what can often happen? There's quite a high bar. And let's be honest, and I often say to people, how sure you can be a complete impartiality. you know, if you go down a formal complaints process, and even if you can sometimes have half a point, but if you fail in your complaint, it can feel like a failure, it can enhance your frustration. So often say and it's much easier to say, have a chat with them, see if something can be resolved before going down that route. So is that part, so somebody's, you know, ringing up complaining, so talking about complaining, do you say, well, you can make a formal complaint, or do you say, have a chat first before doing that formal, which then gets into structure and could not be the best for both parties?
Thank you for that. Yeah, we do. The process for complaints, we don't normally take a complaint until the person themselves has actually spoken to the member of staff or the team manager. So we would normally, if somebody comes to us in the complaints team, we would ask them if they have actually spoken to the relevant member of staff, raised the issue direct, spoken to the team manager. That would be our first port of call, is to refer them to the team manager to see if there is a possible of local resolution in that case before going down a formal process, because you're right, the formal processes can be quite process heavy. But we do have, within the children's process, we do have independent oversight from stage 2. So it's not all handled within the council. Corporates, yes, they do. The first stage is by a member of staff closest to point of service delivery. So that could be the team manager or the senior manager for that area. But normally we wouldn't take that complaint until they've actually had an opportunity to address it more informally at local resolution level. The children's process, that's where you get the independent bodies. We've got to commission independent providers at stage 2 and stage 3 to have a look at that independently before they would then have to go off to the Ombudsman. So it is quite process heavy.
They do, when they do get details of the complaints process and information about the Ombudsman, and they get that
throughout.
full.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Of the there's just 9 complaints that were upheld by the Ombudsman. How is it that we can get to 3 stages of complaint level, where the 3rd stage, I think, is with a panel, and then we've got it wrong all those times for the Ombudsman to overrule it and say they've upheld it? And a few of them all seem to be the same thing, the SEND provision and the HCP. So are we doing anything to rectify those going forward? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's the Ombudsman, when they are recording the complaints, they will put the outcome as upheld. That may have already been identified by the council. So we might have already upheld that complaint at council level, but the person still has the right to escalate to the Ombudsman. What the Ombudsman doesn't always record is the fact that the council have already upheld it, already provided some remedy. They might just disagree with our remedy or make other suggestions. So it's quite often, I don't have that data to hand, but I can certainly include that in future reports of where the council have already upheld it. The Ombudsman will only normally look at issues where they feel they can suggest further resolution. If the person remains dissatisfied, they'll suggest further resolution. So it may be they will suggest an alternative, such as training or reviewing a policy or things like that. So it is, I mean, I would have to go through each of the findings, but quite a lot of them, and I would imagine all 9 in this case, were probably upheld by the council already. We'd already identified learning from it. It's the Ombudsman, they would still uphold it even if the council already have. They may just be making further resolution suggestions. But that all of the learning from either the council's investigation or the Ombudsman's is all taken forward in developmental planning now, with the departments concerned to ensure it's embedded into practice, any improvements.
Okay, Mr. Hodgson.
Just quickly, are there any financial implications for the council for any of these complaints? And if so, how much?
Yes. There's financial implications within the children's complaint process, because we obviously have to commission the services of the independent providers at both stage 2 and stage 3. So there is a financial implication for each one of these complaints that's taken forward through the children's complaints process. Corporate, it's all internal. Then there is a local government and local government social care ombudsman financial remedy the Ombudsman has their own remedies guidance that the council can refer back to when looking at complaints to try and rectify matters. This can lead to a financial remedy being put in place. However, it's not compensation. That's a completely different scheme altogether. These are more symbolic payments that the Ombudsman recommend, symbolic to identify things like what they classify as distress, which can be uncertainty, loss of service, things like that. So we do have, if there's actual, if within a complaint, they look at whether there's been identified financial loss, maybe somebody hasn't been paid for a service that they should have received, or there's some financial implication there, we would put them back in the position where the fault hadn't occurred. That's basically what the Ombudsman will look at. We try to put them back into that position. But there is the symbolic payments. I don't have figures with us, sorry, apologies for that, in terms of how much the council have had to pay out in remedies over the year. But yes, there is. It's not the same as compensation at all. They are symbolic payments, usually up to about £500 to £1,000 in any of the categories.
Thank you for that. We've been asked within the report to obviously listen to the report and to be ensured that we are using our complaints process to improve service delivery. And I think we've had a pretty comprehensive summary of how we use complaints to improve practice. So thank you for that. This is part of an annual report that we get. So we'll look forward to next year. Hopefully the numbers will continue to go down and we'll learn more from it. But it's also about how we understand ourselves as a council, because there are things that will have been complained about which will be used to understand when we get our external inspections. And again, this is all evidenced as well, isn't it? So that's good. Right, so thank you very much for that. We're now moving on to the final substantive item, which is number 6, School Organisation Plan. Audrey, I'll bring you in to introduce this, and then Sue Aberston will take us through the presentation. So, Audrey first.
Thank you, Chair. So, first of all, you will have had this plan previously, those who've been on the committee for a wee while. And as a scrutiny committee, you should be reassured that we have a plan. As I say, you have seen this before. You will also have heard Sue talk about a number of other plans, so it shouldn't be seen in isolation. There are a number of other documents, such as the SEND placement plan. I'm sure I'm trying not to ruin Sue's presentation here, but there are a number of links that you hear are in another range of committees, not just scrutiny, but also through Schools Forum. So it's really important that we think about our pupil numbers and the financial impact, what that means for us here in Northumberland and how we manage that. We've talked already about SEND in a number of areas today, and I'm sure we've got a bit more to talk about. So actually what we use our space for, particularly around our growing needs of young people in Northumberland, and how we use the space in the buildings more broadly, is really, really important. You know that one of our priorities is meeting our children's needs much closer to home. It's really important, as for all the things Marie talked about being able to keep children in their community as much as we possibly can. So that is a bit of a slogan for us that we do think about very, very carefully. So Sue will take you through this. It's a really good week for you to get this report, because actually Monday was National Offers Day for our secondary school places. So I won't steal Sue's thunder, but she will tell you about our performance in Northumberland as well. But a lot in this report, and I'm sure you will have a number of questions for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey. Thanks, Chair. Yep, this is probably an annual outing for me at Scrutiny to bring you up to speed with the school organisation plan. This report actually is a whole new rewrite of the school organisation plan, not just the annual update that I normally bring to you. So again, you know, to reiterate what Audrey said, the plan sets out how the council fulfils its statutory duty, because we do have a statutory duty to provide sufficient school places for all our children and young people that are resident in Northumberland. and that's in order that the council can also achieve that objective, again, that Audrey's also mentioned around enabling all school-aged children to access their education as close to home as possible, regardless of their individual education needs. One of the things that I'll regularly tell you that obviously this document isn't a statutory requirement any longer. Many years ago, I think when I first moved to Northumberland, probably 20 odd years ago, it was a statutory function of the local authority to produce these school organisation plans. So we went through a few years where we didn't actually publicise them, but we were still using them in the background as officers to monitor our places, to make sure that we've got the right number of places in the right place at the right time to meet our community needs. But again, we felt that it was really helpful for the wider communities to understand that. I think it was particularly as we were going through some bulge years, although we're not doing that any longer, where there was probably a shortage of some school places in areas in times gone by. So this now is an annual thing. Obviously, it contains lots of information within the school organisation plan. I'll highlight probably some of the areas where we've probably got some more challenges, and some of the areas where obviously we need to celebrate, and just bringing you up to speed with how the landscape across Northumberland continues to change. So we do still have 168 schools in Northumberland. That obviously includes our academies and free schools. But not the independent private sector that operate within Northumberland. Of these, that we've now got 76 of them that are academies. So again, you will see that rate of schools converting to become academies has slowed down over the last few years. But many of our schools are choosing to form local alliances, which gives them the same opportunities to work together, support each other, whilst remaining the local authority maintained schools. And obviously I think government are currently out to consult around how that landscape and school organisation potentially may change in the future, and what role we may have as a local authority moving forward. So again, as and when updates like national policy changes, we will update the school organisation plan to reflect any changes in our statutory responsibilities or powers as we move forward. So predominantly a lot of information in the plan is about data, isn't it? And you will all be aware of the challenges that we've been having year on year, I think, particularly over the last 5 years when I've been bringing the plan forward, is that reduction in the number of children and young people that we've got across the county. So again, we've seen a further reduction in the number of children and young people. That's fallen by 2%. But again, that doesn't take into account those children that are being educated in special schools or independent schools in Northumberland. So again, that shift that we've talked about already about children accessing specialist provision is also impacting on that 2% reduction in children attending mainstream education. Hence why it's really important that that information comes together in a wider plan for our education. What is quite helpful to us in Northumberland, I think, that our schools are popular, and we have 5.5% of pupils that attend Northumberland schools actually live in neighbouring authorities. So again, that will come as no surprise to anybody that tends to be Newcastle residents moving into Ponteland, Durham residents moving into Hexham, and some of our North Tyneside school families moving into our system in Seaton Valley. But just as our overall school population is declining, the number of children moving from neighbouring local authorities is also in decline. So compared to when we did the original write of the previous plan, we were getting 7% of children from neighbouring authorities into Northumberland, and that has now fallen to 5.5%. So again, what that demonstrates to us is other local authorities are also seeing a decline in the birth rate, and that obviously matches that number of inward migration. Again, children also do choose to attend schools that aren't in Northumberland, so there is that cross-border movement, and we've talked quite a lot when we've been making decisions around school reorganisation in Berwick, particularly around that movement of pupils across the border into Scotland. So that remains about 3.3% of our children living in Northumberland are choosing to be educated outside of the county. So a positive impact in terms of the ins and the outs. Again, you've heard me say there has been a continuing steady decline in the birth rate across Northumberland, and this is having quite a significant impact in some partnerships on the number of surplus places that we've got within our school buildings. And why is this, why is this important? Because it does have financial implications for our schools. So I think this time last year I was sitting here telling you that we'd had a further increase. I think it was around 3% last year, and we've got just over 10,000 surplus places. We've currently got just over 12,000 surplus places, and our overall county average has increased to 23%. That's compared to the 21% that I reported to you this time last year. So again, that continues to be a challenge for us, particularly the further north and the further west. This comes as no surprise, as I've also said this many times before, but those numbers are growing in those, continue to grow in those areas. Currently, we've got over 50% surplus places in the Hayden Bridge Partnership. Berwick is slightly better, with mid-30s, but there will be, obviously the reorganisation will be complete this summer, so you will see the next time I bring the data the impact of that reduction in surplus places in the Berwick Partnership. But we are still seeing obviously a lot more children leaving the education system either at the end of year 11 or 13 compared to the numbers of children that have been born and coming into reception. And again, that is different in each of the partnerships, and you'll see that from the detail within the report, the impact that is having in those local areas. As I've already said, there's also a contributing factor to the increased surplus places, and that's the growth in EHCPs and the demand for special school placements. So again, widely shared with committee, we've seen an increase of up to 67% between 2021 and 2025, so the life of the two plans, in the increase in EHCPs. As you're aware, we do have a SEND and alternative provision capacity planning strategy that will come to the next meeting of this committee as well. So you'll be able to see where that demand is, where the school placements are being made, and the impact that has overall. There is, however, as Audrey said, some good news in all of this, and where there is obviously surplus places, that allows us to be able to plan effectively for those pupil numbers coming through. So this time last year, I think it was just over 97% of our parents and carers in Northumberland got their first preference for a secondary school place. Those offers were made again on Monday, and again we've seen a further increase, so over 98% of our parents and carers have received their first preference for their children this year. National Offers Day for reception in 2026 is on the 16th of April, so again we'll be able to report back as to what those offers will be. Again, we're expecting those to be definitely in line with last year's offers, which again I think was around 97%, as that birth rate continues to fall. The plan also not only talks about the numbers and the challenges that we've got, obviously, with surplus places and that decline in birth rates, but we also talk about the investment that we make in our school buildings. So again, where we are building new schools for schools, where we are adding capacity as a result of either school reorganisation or bulge years coming through some of our school partnerships. So again, where there's significant house building numbers, again, we've seen a bulge go through the schools here in Morpeth and how we've invested. So the whole section within the school organisation plan, section 5.5, that sets out the investments that we've made in the school estates, and also how we utilise section 106 money from those housing developers, as well as using our own capital to support that growth as well. So the most, I suppose, significant challenge moving forward is how we manage that surplus capacity. And again, we will continue, as it sets out in the plan, to use consultation on the reduction of planned admission numbers to ensure a fairness across our school partnerships, to ensure that our schools remain both educationally and financially viable, and that one school doesn't become more popular and take more children at the expense of its local community. That is a strategy that we've used for the last few years. I think the last one that we bought here would have been when we reduced the planned admission number at the Seal first school in Hexham. Again, as we've talked about, challenge through various routes. The school did challenge that decision through the school's adjudicator, but that ruling was found in the council's favour, and our robust consultation and strategy around how we manage our numbers was obviously upheld by the school's adjudicator. We've made one smaller change this year to just to one school in Alnwick, but we will be bringing a lot more schools forward in next year's schools admissions consultation to fully implement these proposals moving forward. So again, probably something I'll talk to you about a lot more next time that we come, that the reduction in school places does give us opportunity, and that opportunity to meet children's needs as close to home as possible has seen us convert surplus places in some of our primary schools into specialist support bases. So again, those have been very successful in terms of the financial impacts that they've had for us as a council in providing really cost-effective local solutions to meet the needs of children. So much so that we are going into Cabinet in April to launch a formal statutory consultation to make a number of those permanent features in our primary schools. We're developing them further and looking to open 2 secondary provisions in September, one being at Berwick Academy that this committee will be aware of. And we've got children identified and had the school named on their EHCP for September, and we're also looking to open one in Ashington as well, so that it is a growing picture for us, which will enable us to meet that strategy around meeting need as close to home as possible. Thanks, Mike.
So thank you for that, Sue. What I'm going to do is I just want to draw members' attention to page 53 of your report. So it says recommendations, what we are here to do with this report. So we're noting that it's the 3rd version, noting that the plan will be constantly updated using data to drive that, which Sue has gone into some detail about. And then the third, 3.3, is we're requested to consider the plan and to submit comments ahead of its circulation to schools and other partnership stakeholders for their views prior to it being published on the council's websites. So, on that basis, I'm now going to take some questions. So I'll take Suzanne first, then Councillor Green, and then Mr. Hodgson.
Thank you, Sue. Yes, I totally agree. Close to home, can't allow rural schools to die because they are so much more than just a school in a lot of the communities. They are a community hub. There is space for facilities to be used. They are the reason people move there if we just build more homes. My first question is very simple. Is the rural subsidy still there beyond the early years to allow that to happen for kids in rural areas to go to their local schools and a bit further afield? My second question is to do with the brave decision that was made in the Seal school about reducing the PAN there, because, as you've mentioned, some schools have a lot of surplus places in our area, and some schools are actually full to capacity or on target, maybe a bit over. Now, what was interesting with the Seal decision was the percentage of children that came from beyond catchment that was actually quite sort of crucial to sort of helping other schools thrive around it. And I think it was about 33%. It was about a third of students came from outside of that catchment. and that was needed to help those other schools. So to me, parent choice is an illusion, because you don't have parent choice if you don't have a range of schools. And to keep that range, it's really important to control those plans. Now, the elephant in the room here is obviously academies. So in relation to academies, does the new powers hinted at in the, I think it's the Wellbeing and Children's Bill and the Schools Bill, allow for us to be able to influence those figures and allow other schools to thrive rather than one school to become a super school, as it were?
In terms of local children being educated locally, yeah, that's obviously absolutely the strategy from the local authority. And obviously we do provide lots of transport. Again, that's also laid out in the school organisation plan, the amount of funding that the local authority does spend on an annual basis and continue. Again, I think that was risen another £2.3 million this year for mainstream children, getting them to their local or nearest school as per the policy. So, you know, that is not a proposal that the local authority is looking to change, so that will remain in place. In terms of our powers over academies, it's not clear whether we will have any further statutory powers. What I will say is we are very fortunate in Northumberland. We have very strong relationships with our academy trusts who do rely on us, and we work very closely, particularly around school place planning. So, for instance, I think there were 3 or 4 of the Cheviot Trust schools that have consulted to reduce their planned admission number without, you know, with support from the local authority. Again, looking at the local landscape, particularly here in Morpeth and in Prudder, to ensure that the viability of all schools remains in that local area. So the powers of persuasion and influence are the ones that we use with quite a lot of success, because the strong relationships that we've got, and we'll continue to do that regardless of whether we are given any statutory powers. That's the last thing we like to rely on in Northumberland. It is all about working together.
Times, obviously, you have to, and it would be nice to have that power at your elbow at times, I'm very sure. I think going forward with this plan, it would be really helpful to know the percentage from out of catchment. Certainly, in the, I think that really sort of lays it bare to the community as to what's happening, so that these things can be challenged, but with full transparency. And I would urge you definitely to put those figures in as much as possible.
Yeah, it's certainly something we do, that when we look at school reorganisations, and we call it, I suppose, the loyalty factor, the number of people that live within the catchment area that attend the school, and then the popularity factor, those that choose to move into a catchment area for a school. So that's absolutely something that we've definitely got the data. I think we just have to be a little bit careful for some schools where the numbers are so small that we can't have individual families identified, etc. So we will look at it, and where possible, we will look to include that data moving forward.
Audrey, did you want to add anything to that?
Very quickly. So in relation to our rural schools, our strategy has not changed. So it's really important, and I guess it links with everything Marie talked about, you know, knowing our families, understanding their particular needs and keeping them in their communities is really, really important. So one of the things that we have done is, and actually I'll talk a little more about some of this, maybe touch on it later, but probably in another deep dive session. But we set up, I think we have 11 alliances, which are our own versions of multi-academy trusts without the MAT label. So you'll remember that the white paper 3 years ago allowed us to do that, and then it very quickly disappeared. The new white paper also allows us to do that. We are in a really strong position. I think I might have these numbers slightly wrong. 11 alliances, and I think it's around 76 schools. So the greater majority of those schools who are not yet in a multi-academy trust are within our alliances. That strengthens the ability for our small rural schools to thrive. And part of that is about resilience, it's about leadership, it's about career development. There's a whole raft of qualities that they bring that don't have the multi-academy trust model where there is a top slice of finance. So the monies remain within the school, and that's an investment that the local authority put forward. We are yet to see what the multi-academy trust model that we may have to conform to in terms of the new white paper. But as soon as I have that, then I will share that with you.
That's great, thank you. So if I can bring Councillor Green, Mr Hodgson, and then Georgina Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 points. First of all, I personally disagree with the notion that every school area seems to have capacity, and if parents want to put their children in what's deemed the best school, it seems that we're diverting them to an under-supported school, and I don't think that's right for the person in to start with. Secondly, I do agree wholeheartedly with the having annexes in the schools for more SEND provision, so that transportation is less for the SEND provision. Is there any way we can then move some of the transportation savings into the school that's under capacity to help them still be supported and carry on?
You want to go about it? I'm not doing it.
So we'll perhaps agree to disagree on the first point, Councillor Green, but you know, I am of the view that children should attend school. That is my first point. And my second is that ideally the school closest to their home that is able to meet their needs would be my view. And then, you know, and I appreciate parental choice or perhaps patterns of driving to work and journeys do sometimes influence that, and I do respect that. In terms of diverting the monies around, if the transport bill were able to reduce, that is something we are constantly looking at. Sue and I and wider teams spend a lot of time with our transport colleagues looking at that actually. And it's not necessarily about diverting that money into schools in that area. What you will see as part of the white paper and the SEND paper is investments in our schools to be able to develop more of the primary support bases. We are ahead of the curve, so we have primary support bases and special support bases in Northumberland. That is what the white paper is advocating. So we're already on that track. I think we've got about 8 or 9 at this moment. I might be slightly out in the numbers. They are concentrated in the southeast where our greatest point of need is at present. That's where we started the process. They are working very well. They're all ever so slightly different. You would expect them to be different because they need to meet the needs of the cohorts and the schools in their localities. You will see much more of those growing in Northumberland, and as I understand it, we have some investment coming from DFE to be able to support that growth.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr Hodgson and then Georgina.
Yeah, obviously the sort of surplus places, the 23% figure, of course, isn't uniform, obviously, across the authority, and you're going to have partnerships that are more impacted than others. But obviously, in the report, the quote on page 73 is, the increasing surplus placed in the county is already becoming one of the biggest challenges to schools, the council and other admission authorities. If we just take the schools themselves, it's not so much surplus places, it's getting to a point where it becomes financially a challenge, it's not viable. And the worry aspect is that you're going to get a number of schools that are going to be very close to that line or possibly dropping just below it. And we know the trend is one way. We're dropping 2% a year. Now that's 2% across the county. In certain partnerships, that's going to be greater. And the impact on the individual schools is going to be greater. So therefore, you're going to have staffing implications. You're going to have, well, putting age groups together, all those sort of things that possibly impact on attainment and standards. The process that you've got to deal with it, you know, you've alluded to there about how all the different various trusts and so on have got their own powers, if you like, to do what they can do for that. But the worry is, do we not need a more joined up approach? Because if we carry on like this, to a certain extent, it's death by 1,000 cuts. And the danger is that you're going to get schools that are going to struggle, and therefore children are going to be affected. And, you know, at the end of the day, why are we doing it? Because, interestingly, say like Prudhoe, you mentioned Prudhoe, and even I think it was on the news about North Tyneside, where schools were put forward for reorganisation, and very quickly it was pulled back. Now, in whose interest is that? Was it a political decision to say, well, we'll keep the parents happy, but ultimately, was it the right thing to do for as far as budgets are concerned? Was it the right thing to do for the children? So what I'm saying is maybe the actual process of looking at it needs to be more urgent and a shorter time scale and possibly more radical. I don't know. And the second question is, there's that. But just out of interest, you didn't mention, what's the number of homeschool children? Because that obviously impacts as well. I mean, that's been growing, hasn't it?
It has, yeah, Ron, yeah. I don't hold that number in my head, but I will get it for you.
So Sue, can you take that question? But just for the benefit of anybody watching, and I'm sure you would cover this, I think some people think that you have a school and it just gets money from the government or from the council and it's just told, right, just go and educate the kids. It's predicated on the number of children in the school. So each child brings a funding stream. And this is, so that gives the context for your question, because I think some people might think that a school with 20 pupils is going to get the same money that a school with 200 gets, and it is a very different story. So, Sue, if you could pick that up.
Yeah, thank you. And you're absolutely right. One of the things I didn't quantify that impact that was having on schools' budgets. So the annual budget setting process has just been complete in Northumberland this year, and that has seen us, because of that drop in pupil numbers, we've had £3 million less than we did last year. Because of that fall in numbers, the impact that had on us in the previous or the current financial year meant that in Northumberland we couldn't pay the national funding formula because there wasn't enough funding actually coming in Northumberland for us to passport that money to our schools. It has been a little bit better this year with various grants being rolled into the funding. We're still not paying national funding formula for some of the values, but the majority we've moved closer to national funding formula values this year. But you're right, that individual impact in individual areas on individual schools is felt significantly by some and very little by others. Again, you know, as I answered previously, this is about the powers of persuasion and influence to bring people together to act in the best interests of the children in Northumberland. And again, I think it's one thing that we really pride ourselves on as a team, is that they're all Northumberland children, regardless of the management and structure that actually sits within, you know, within their schools. And that is what we can continue to do. We're currently working with all the schools in the west of Northumberland currently around our send capacity, strategy and growth. That does lead to other conversations about making sure that we've got a sustainable education system for all. But it is something that's very local, and we're taking very much that local approach as we roll that out. I mean, you know, having a local authority strategy, as we probably did many years ago in putting the learner first, and the complete reorganisation across the whole of the county, and having a programme of school closures to address some of these issues that we are now still talking about nearly 20 years later. That is really not a plan for the future for Northumberland. That needs to be a desire of our elected members and all interested parties, and there really isn't that interest to launch something like that again, I don't think.
So in effect, you're saying it's self-interest?
It could be seen as that, Mr. Hodgson, yes, definitely.
Audrey, I think you wanted to come in on something as well.
Yeah, Marie got me the number, 631 for our electively home education. numbers currently, but that will be a report coming to Facts and Plan because we are revisiting the electively home education model for Northumberland, and we want to share that with you. I wanted to come in on the back of how we work together, and actually, do we have powers of influence, or do we have any statutory powers? So our statutory powers are really clear, but it's not about the influence to make decisions where our multi-academy trusts exist. Clearly, they report direct to DFE. What I am very pleased about with the latest legislation, the white paper, green paper to come out. So I sat in an evening meeting with the Secretary of State last week, who said the role of the local authorities is significantly influential. The role of the DCS and the Director of Education with our schools is influential to drive collaboration and work together for the best for children in their local area. That to me was, if I'd written down something I wanted out of the meeting, I'd have written that down and put it in an envelope. Sue's right. I think we have really good relationships with our trusts in Northumberland. They picked the phone up to us. I received a card from one of them this morning because it was something actually that Sue worked really hard on. They sent the card to me, but I'll be sharing it with the team. So, you know, that doesn't happen everywhere. And we have made it our business to work with people because ultimately I am statutorily responsible for every child in Northumberland. And so they're all entitled to have us be their voice when we need to be their voice.
Thank you. Georgina Hill.
Thank you. I have a couple of quick, important but quite quick, simple questions. But first, I sort of agree what Councillor Green said, but it's only sort of in theory. But I think the idea of the good schools expand and the bad ones close, but obviously with the geographic challenges we have in Northumberland, that, you know, it's not feasible. I sort of know in theory where you're coming from on that one. I'm half joking. I wonder if we could have I am half joking, but a task group. We were talking about this the other day about how we increase the birth rate.
It was a good
should we
discussion.
investing in free booze and nightclubs? You know, I don't know. But it is.
Plan for Berwick.
Is it not
Georgina?
breed to succeed? That's your line. You take that one. But no, the couple of quick questions, the more serious ones, is first of all, page in the report 26, 82, said that regarding, and obviously you can understand what area I'm focusing in on, Berwick Academy new buildings, funding of 35.4 million committed by the council. Is that a misprint? Because it was 50.91.
Well spotted. It is absolutely a misprint.
It is,
yeah,
good.
It is.
I was waiting to get it really worked out. I was waiting for
I wasn't going to give you the good news. Yeah.
And then it said, you all agreed with the new figure in the school reorganisation, but it is a misprint, yes.
No, full council obviously made that decision a couple of weeks ago, and that is the budget that's set for Berwick.
Make sure that's
obviously a misprint.
minuted, that is definitely the wrong
And it
figure.
will be updated before it's published. Obviously, as you know, the documents come here for consultation first before we do that.
I was just
before we do
busy
that
doing a big
consultation.
calculation about inflation figures and everything from the 40 million agreed in 21. So that's fine. That's a misprint. My blood pressure's just gone down. Just breathe slowly. And the other question on stats, what page was it? On 35 in the report, where it says, 37. Where it says that regarding the independent school Longridge Towers, which is located in the Berwick catchment area, the council historically arranged for children resident on Holy Island to be educated there from middle school age. Do I read that paid for? The council paying for children on Holy Island at Longridge? Because I have heard that before, and I mean, but I think that would raise eyebrows by some, that the council's paying for private school fees.
yes, the local authority does pay a contribution towards the
Contribution,
education.
not the full fees.
Yeah, because the school themselves do allow bursaries, so that the value that the local authority pays to Longridge is not the full cost of a place for obviously a private parent. So that's an arrangement that's probably been in place probably for over 20 years to my knowledge.
Is it more than what you pay for whatever it is, the fourth, whatever you pay per pupil for in the state system? Is it more than that, or is it just the same amount?
I'd need to come back to you in terms
That'd be
of
quite
the actual,
interesting
yeah, the actual
to
value.
be quite clear on what that arrangement is.
Yeah, that does get reported into Schools Forum on a regular basis, the value that we do spend at Longridge. We'll dig that number out, Councillor Hill. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just, was there any other comments from anyone? Oh, Mr. Bird, and then I'll come in. Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me, friends. The document itself is extremely thorough, but to me it lacks enough detail around what the authority proposes to do about these falling number of places. And to call it a plan, it surely needs to involve actions, outlines, how we're going to accomplish something. I've raised this before. It's really not a plan. It's a very thorough document. But to me, a plan is a proposal with some certain steps, what we will do if, and it lacks that kind of detail. And just to come back to my friend, my colleague next to me's point about the produce situation, and Audrey's really good comment about an alliance of schools is similar to a MAT. It is, but it's not in many cases, because a successful multi-academy trust can use its finances from its successful schools to prop up a less than financially viable small country school. And that's where they really are successful. Where an alliance of Northumberland County Council schools will never be in a position where the schools with a survivable budget are going to help out the school down the road. They wouldn't be allowed to do that. And there isn't any good news around this, colleagues. I'm currently engaged with 11 Northumberland schools who are currently consulting on job losses because of falling school numbers. And we envisage that will be a year-on-year a continuing situation. So not many questions in that, apologies for that, but I thought it might be useful. Thank you.
For the context of anyone watching this who can't read your sign, you're actually a trade union representative.
Yeah, I'm here to represent colleagues from NSCW to NEU, the teaching unions, plus Unison Unite and the GMB, who are all
some context.
who are all suffering similar job losses. Thank you.
Audrey, did you want to pick up on those questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, I will. So, in true to style form, Steve, I will agree to disagree with you in terms of that. So I do believe it is a plan. I would agree that it probably needs an action plan, and that's very different to the broader, wider set out plan that's there. What I wouldn't want to do is predetermine now what we're going to do in 2030, because this has a 5-year plan, and things can change. I'm not suggesting we're going to have huge birth rates or influx of people at that point, but things do change, and we work with all of our schools and partnerships more broadly. In relation to restructures, I actually don't think it's just the falling pupil numbers that are going to cause those. Our white paper and impending green paper will require our system to look very, very different. So I think these are ongoing discussions that are going to be engaged with for some while to come. And I think I need to say really clearly, this is not a Northumberland issue. This is across the whole country where there are falling roles. Everywhere is impacted. We are also a sector where we are seeing teachers leave the profession routinely. We're seeing reduced numbers, and we're seeing reduced capacity in leadership. So sadly, teachers are not making choices enough to be able to step up and go into leadership. That's absolutely and reasonably their choice to make. They have seen over the number of years that perhaps they have trained that this sector has changed immeasurably. and I believe it will continue to do so. So I think this is some of the challenging discussions that the sector will have for some time to come. Thank you.
Just from my side, just looking at this, and we've had discussions about rural schools, smaller population areas, smaller number of pupils. I think it's fair, and if people don't know this, 70% of the population of Northumberland live in 20% of the land mass. So that's the kind of Cramlington, Blythe areas. And just looking as a Cramlington councillor at this report, you see the complexity of this situation where we've got partnerships with small population numbers, small number of pupils with surplus places. But you look at Cramlington, which in this report is very clear, it's got the highest number of new builds anywhere in the county. And yet, the population numbers, the birth rate's gone down. And one of those things that we've got to put into this mix is the impact of people buying very expensive houses where probably they can't afford for one of them to be out of work for a couple of years, childminding and what have you, because of the impact that will have on their lifestyle and their mortgage. So you'll see the complexity we have, small population areas, small schools, number of pupils decreasing, an area with high number of builds, high population area where the pupil numbers are also decreasing because of different pressures. And this is part of a much bigger conversation around how we can support that. But I thought it was just interesting within the context. You'll see very clearly there that Cramlington is cited because most people would think, oh, build more houses, you'll have more kids. The formula is, I think, for every 100 houses, it generates 3 children in a year group. Some of those people in Cramlington are displaced, as in they've lived somewhere else in Cramlington, moving to somewhere else in Cramlington. So again, this is the big mix that we need to look at as a local authority, and us as Scrutiny will need to look at going forward about how we can support officers to come out with a plan. But I thought that was a really interesting context, whilst the focus has been on small numbers, small schools, rural areas. Look at the urban areas. Equally, some similar challenges, some of the economic challenges. But I think, Sue, what we've had there is a really good report. And again, I think reinforcing that point you said up front, we don't have to do this, but we are doing it because information is power. And this will be shared with our public, and we'll change the figure for Berwick. Don't worry, Georgina, you've lost your front page lead there. But yeah, we'll obviously share this with the public, and this will form part of, I think, wider conversations going on. But I think the key message from me, and I think certainly I'm speaking for everyone in the council here, is that, you know, we have a commitment to our young people and to our students, and to make sure that they get the best education they possibly can. So thank you very much for that, Sue. Genuinely appreciate that report and the detail which went with it. We're now moving on to number 7, reports of the Scrutiny Officer. Rebecca.
Thanks, Chair. Both reports are just to note, I don't have any verbal updates at the moment, but just to reiterate that if any members have anything they want to bring to the work programme, to get in touch.
And I think Vice Chair Michaela Horncastle wants to come in as well on this one.
I know it's been mentioned a couple of times this morning, but there's been a lot in the news about the school's white paper and the SEND green paper. Can you give us an update on this?
Thank you. So white paper is published. I can give you a few set headlines, and I've probably got a couple of briefing papers that I can share with Rebecca and share that round committee members. The SEND green paper is a consultation paper. It's often been described as mint, apparently. So it started off as white. I did call it the lesser spotted white paper because we have waited an awful long time for this. So there is a 12-week consultation. We'll be down to 10, about 10 and a bit weeks now, I think. So I will also share the link to the consultation with Rebecca, and then if committee members would want to be able to share their thoughts in that consultation, that would be really appreciated. I'm going to give you just a few headlines that I think will really resonate with what we've talked about this morning, and some of the things that actually you have asked as questions today. So it gives some assurance, I think, that actually you as a scrutiny committee, or I'm going to say you're on it, in terms of where the challenges are and what we could possibly do about it. So really headline messages both from white and green paper. So the intention is that this builds a genuinely inclusive education system. It is to redesign SEND pathways around early intervention and outcomes, rebalance investment towards prevention and family support. So everything Marie's talked about, so the SEND system can learn an awful lot from that early intervention and prevention, but even that system's going to get some strengthening and some work to go with it. Respond to rapid technological change, including AI. So again, we've covered that this morning, we've talked about it, talked about the investment and impact. So this is, for me, about ensuring all of our children are aware how to use it and use it appropriately, and we're prepared for future careers. There is a parenting aspect to it that you'll be pleased to hear too. Position schools as public services and community anchors. That suggests to me meeting needs much closer to home. You'd think we'd written this, really. Maybe they have listened to us all the time. Strengthen evidence-based teaching and the importance of continued learning at home. So that not, there you go, it's your job to teach our children, which we do hear often. Actually, how do we help the home situation to be able to work with children to continue what they learn in school, to be able to continue that after school in the evenings, breakfast before they come, so they're well prepared to come into school and ready to learn. But actually over weekends and over holiday periods, we all know that potential dip that happens in the 6 weeks holiday, that summer holiday leave. And actually the importance of our holiday activity work that we do in Northumberland and some great stuff across the country that really helps some of those children not relax as much in terms of their learning and their brain energy and level, and they're much more ready to come back into school in September. Tackle, I love that word, tackle attendance, behaviour, disadvantage and narrow the attainment gap. You will love that sentence, won't you? So, but really, really appropriate. And there's a lot of detail involved in this, so it's possibly something I'll suggest in a moment. And this is the one that I think you will like most of all. Stabilise and support the workforce and rebuild parental confidence. So that relates to not just education, but particularly SEND as well. So there is parental responsibility in here, as well as the workforce responsibility as well. So those are the headlines to each of those papers. I will share briefings. And it may be, Chair, Vice Chair, that you would like us to do a development session. I have to say we've got a lot going on in children. So Marie referenced the Families First Partnership. That is seismic system change in our families' work that we do in children's services. And I would really like this committee to understand actually what we are doing. We feel we're slightly ahead of the system in the region and that. So I'd really like this committee to understand that. You will get some reports, but it's great to do a bit of a deep dive into that. I would suggest we don't do the deep dive yet in SEND and perhaps follow on from our November session, or December session, I think it was, because actually this is consultation. So the green paper, as a result of the consultation, may change. So once we know what that says, and once I've got more solid messages around white paper, and what does that really mean? Because there's some really strong headline statements at the moment. But like you, I'm desperate to understand the more detailed proposals, the investments that are promised into our schools and into local services to be able to support schools, and that ability for us to be a formal multi-academy trust model. Whether I can just switch alliances into the model, I don't know yet. We haven't got that detail. So once I've got that, I'm very happy to develop with you what you would like and how you would like us to share that with you.
fully support that development session. But Michaela, did you want to add anything?
There's also been an area send inspection. Can you share anything on this yet?
I could give you a headline. I can't go into detail because that's subject to judgment, but I wondered, did Mr Hodgson want to ask a question before I go
Yeah,
into
Audrey, yeah, it's 50 years since I did my O-level economics and public affairs, but could you just, my recollection is a green paper then goes on to a white paper.
It does.
And then you've got the whole parliamentary process. So the chances of that, what you said, becoming law could well be 2 years, 3 years down the line.
It is expected 2029-30 before this all
That's
comes
what I thought.
into.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
However, it is a work towards, and there are expectations that we work towards the legislation. You'll see when you get the documents that there are references to, there'll be a consultation to change around legislation. So the SEND Code of Practice, it is proposed to review. It's in the Green Paper for consultation. My professional thoughts are, I think that will get a significant level of concern from parents around what that looks like. There are some proposed national frameworks within the Green Paper. And again, it's great to have some models of consistency, but our children are not consistent. And so to be able to meet their individual needs, we need to have the ability to have some nuance there.
But sorry, I'm just picking up. But you know what frustrates you in all this is, I mean, I was down in London last week, and we all know the investment that was put in by central government for that London project there, that raised standards and continues to maintain those high standards. We'll never get that. And that's the frustration with this. You know, when you say it's not an even playing field, it never will be an even playing field. And in Northumberland, we're always going to have those challenges. And the root of the challenge is finance. And that's the biggest frustration of all.
So interestingly, there is investment that goes with all of the proposals. That has been said very clearly. I can't yet define exactly what that looks like. But I'm not going to look at Chair, but I'm sure he'll want to say something about this. But as part of the white paper, they have announced Mission Northeast and Mission Coastal. One of the reasons I came to Northumberland was as a result of the North of Tyne work around the education challenge that Chair in his previous role championed within the North of Tyne Combined Authority. And so that, as we rolled into the North East Combined Authority, that was something that actually we have done a lot of work on across the North East, but it didn't get, I'm going to say, the heft that perhaps the London Challenge got at the time. This sounds like we're about to get the London Challenge, which is brilliant. But I haven't got the details. So as soon as we've got the detail and we know what that means and I can articulate that to you, I will share it with you.
There are some good things potentially ahead, but we had a fantastic opportunity. So when I was on the Combined Authority as the education lead, we had our education challenge proposal, which went to government. It kind of landed various places, but nothing came of it. We had iterations of it. But I think what is very clear is that the London challenge was a partnership, understanding data, understanding issues, working around common purpose. And I think, to be fair, what you've heard today is we've pretty much got that model up here, and we have had for a number of years. We just need some cash to follow it. And if we get the cash to follow it, the fantastic work which has been done in Northumberland will literally just go through the stratosphere. So some good stuff potentially on that. And I think there was
Chair,
a second.
yes, it was. So it was we have had the area send inspection. So David and I were sat in Queen Elizabeth School in Hexham on the last morning that we could get the call before the February half-term break, and sure enough, we got the call. So the inspection is the area send partnership. So as we have clearly said to you before, That is not just Northumberland County Council and the education and care, our adult care and public health. It is all of our commissioned health services, the ICB and all of our health trusts in the locality that we work with. So we have a provisional judgment. I'm not in a position to share that with you. Clearly we are told very, very clearly by the lead inspector that that's embargoed until we have the report. According to the timeline, I should get the report today, and I've been checking my emails just in case it came in. It's still not here yet. The thing that I would say to you is we worked very well with our partners for the last 2 years. Every 6 weeks we have had an Ofsted preparation meeting around SEND. It's complex. It falls to me as the DCS to take the lead on this across all of our partners. It was 3 weeks of hard slog with a fantastic team. I always tell you that I'm really privileged to lead a team here in Northumberland. I was very, very fortunate to have a fantastic partnership that worked alongside us. At any point in those 3 weeks, there were as many health staff on the first floor in County Hall as there were education and care staff. So it is our adult care team, it is our public health team, our social care team, in its widest sense. You know, Marie's already talked to you about our family hubs and the engagement. It is our widest education team, including all of our schools, alternative provision, early years, childcare. I'm bound to have missed somebody out here who'll be watching this and go nuts at the end of it. And of course our infrastructure team, so Sue and our skills team and FE College as well. So everybody is involved in this. It is a pretty big feat. All I will say to you is that, as you would expect, we know ourselves well. We are really clear about what we do well and what we still have to do. And I am pleased that Ofsted agreed with the fact that we think we know ourselves well, and that's the most appropriate thing that I can say. You will have a presentation that won't just be me, it will be health colleagues sat next to me, and we'll do that jointly at a future scrutiny once we're in a position to publish the paper.
So keep checking while we're speaking, Audrey, just in case. Suzanne, if I can bring you in.
Years ago, we had something to do with the fax budget. So I recall it was about 3 years ago now. And following the budget meeting at full council, I wonder if we could look at, you know, what goes in, what goes out. I know it's not going to be very neat. You know, and within that, maybe the national funding formula, subsidies, the grants, basically what goes where within this committee would be really helpful, I think, to have an overview.
So a summary of what Children's Services education budget looks like,
yes,
including schools forum as well, which we all have a standing invite to attend. So just a kind of high level overview is what you would like. Yeah. That would be fine. Good. Right. So I'll move on to the next item, urgent business. I have none. Audrey still hasn't got the report, so we can't tell you. So we'll obviously pick that up. Just follow the media, and I'm sure James will be covering whatever the result of the inspection was. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time this morning, and have a good weekend and rest of the week. And we'll see you at the next fax meeting. Thank you.